Right now, this is Ticker News Insight.
Hello and welcome back to Ticker News Insight, where we are looking to focus on the best of business with very clever people joining us from right around the world. I'm your host, Mike Loader, and to my latest guest. And as we've seen in recent times, Australia has been somewhat of the lucky country for business, avoiding most of the serious consequences of the economic disturbances that are going on across the globe. But according to business specialist Ingrid Maynard, founder of The Sales Doctor, that might all be about to change as Aussie businesses feel the financial squeeze, with inflation and interest rates showing no sign of easing and a global recession most likely on the horizon. It will be a rocky 2023 for business, and Ingrid joins us now to explain further. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mike.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. So what are the push points that we're seeing with business at the moment with the rising costs and, of course, that ongoing threat of recession? Take us through what you're witnessing.
Yeah, look, I think that there's a few things that I'm hearing. A lot of people are saying, well, look, not every economist agrees that we'll definitely be going into a recession. Some economists say that if we go into a recession, it'll be short, sharp, and then over with. And then others are actually saying it could be as bad as the recession that we had to have back in the late 90s. So there's a lot of uncertainty. What happens with that uncertainty is that businesses stop making decisions. There's decision-making inertia because there's more at stake for every decision that's made. When you've got rising costs, every purchase decision, for example, comes under the microscope, and the risk can be growth, which is going to create further opportunity in future, is put at risk in light of short-term cost cuts.
Absolutely. Ingrid, can you outline why inflation is such a danger to those in business, and I guess what impacts it's currently having on them day to day?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that there's a lot of businesses that have been locked into contracts and arrangements, whether that be interest rates or just rising costs with suppliers that they hadn't planned for. And so that's eroding any kind of cash reserve that they may have left. Many businesses are in the position that, they've used up their cash reserves over the last 3 years during the pandemic. So there's that. The other thing is too that, whenever you've got inflation, you've got an erosion of investment in economic growth, in business growth and in long-term investment. So that's really the big danger. And as I said before, just the impact on decision-making. I think some businesses, make decisions like, should we let people go? Should we cut costs now? I think the question really is around resources is, if we say that we can't afford to keep people on, can we also afford to let people go? So you take a restaurant, for example, if they let their people go, they might not have a business. Where do you draw the line? Do you draw the line with wait staff? Do you draw the line with kitchen staff, chefs, those sorts of things? Or do you just cut trading hours? All of those have significant long-term impacts on customer loyalty and expectations.
Absolutely. So if a global recession, or I guess a significant downturn, is on the horizon, how should businesses be preparing, do you think? Is there something you can leave us with today that sort of outlines how to fortify a business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that really it comes back to really sound business disciplines and practices. The first thing I would say is plan. It's always easier to adjust a plan than it is to think on the fly, particularly when, there's, some panic or fear or uncertainty at play. The other thing too is have a look at return on investment and return on capital. So are the investments that we made during the pandemic paying us dividends now? If not, it's time to make a decision about those and let some of those go. I would also say, well, what have we got now from a resourcing capability perspective, and how can we maximise the return on those things? And then also I would be looking at building trust and loyalty, not just with customers. That's always good business practice because they're like a bank. And you can rely on them to stay with you through good times and bad times, but also with employees. We need good, solid good return on capital. And the best way to do that is to treat our employees well and to make sure that they feel loyal to the organisation as well, so that we get more out of them, but also that they stay. And with all of that, we get the retention of knowledge and experience.
Yeah. Ingrid, just to finish for me, if you had to summarise our discussion today and perhaps a look into the future very quickly for me, what would be the wording that you might use to predict 2023?
Well, I always think that, future is, we can look to the past to predict the future, really. And what goes up must come down eventually. We can't have 30 years of pretty much continuous growth without it coming back down the other end. And for most economists that have been around the block a few times, they know that a recession is actually going to be a good correction, but that doesn't mean that, there's not going to be some pain there. So businesses just really need to have a focus on their long-term vision and mission, stay that, and be sensible and avoid doing any kind of knee-jerk reaction.
Absolutely. Ingrid, thank you so much for joining me on the program.
Thanks so much.